The Edmonton Oilers are home and cooled. Now they're sitting and waiting to find out if they're going to face the Predators or the Vancouver Canucks in the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. To discuss that, let's go to Vancouver and bring in Farhan Lalji. Farhan, the Canucks do have some breathing room. They've got 2 more games to win, just 1 more to advance to face the Edmonton Oilers. But is there a sense of urgency now that they know that Connor McDavid and company are home and resting and waiting?
Yeah, I think there is some urgency, probably more than anything else, because this series has been so unpredictable. So, I'm not sure it's necessarily because of what happened in Edmonton. Ian Cole, one of the guys that's had so much playoff experience, has just said, look, every time you get into a series, you need to be prepared to go 7 games. If it happens to go shorter than that, that's great. But right now, when you look at this series, any of the games could have been won by the other team. So even though the Canucks had a 3-1 margin, the series has been much closer than that. And, you look at the way the last game ended, and Vancouver got a lead after 2 scoreless periods. And normally they've been so good at closing out leads. All of a sudden it doesn't happen. And the longer you go, to your point about what happens in the next round, the longer you go here, the more you gain an element of risk in terms of another player that can get hurt, right? I mean, I remember back in 2011 when the Canucks went into Game 5, just having to go into overtime of that game, it affected Ryan Kessler, right? And he got an injured groin, which then plagued him during the Stanley Cup final. Any additional minutes you have to play can come back and haunt you. Just look at, how Nashville is trying to just put a beating on Quinn Hughes and the number of hits that he's taken in this series. The longer the series goes, all of those things can come into play. So the Canucks would do themselves a lot of favors by not letting this go past Friday.
Speaking of injuries, goaltending, they've got 3 wins in this series to 3 different goalies because of injuries. Seelovs comes in, gets the win when Casey DeSmith was hurt. Seelovs lost last game. Casey DeSmith is now healthy and ready to go. Who should get the start in Friday's Game 6?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that Rick Tocchet's not going to divulge. He says he's going to make the decision later today, which, he's probably made the decision and just doesn't want to get into it with the media and give Nashville an extra day to prepare. But if it's me, I probably turn back to Casey DeSmith, in terms of goaltending performances since Thatcher Demko's got hurt. I think it was DeSmith's first win, the first win they wound up having in Nashville in Game 3. I think that was probably the best goaltending performance we've seen from either backup. And if, in fact, his injury has healed, and I know there's been some speculation that it might be a slight groin injury. He has been practicing. He did spend some additional time before practice today with goaltending coach Ian Clark, getting some extra work in. So, if it's me, I probably would go with DeSmith, knowing that, if you come back to Seelovs, it's a little less of a difficult situation. If you put Seelovs in now and all of a sudden he doesn't play well, and then you've got to wait until a Game 7 to put DeSmith back in, that might not be the best thing in terms of showing some confidence. But when you look at both of these goalies, they both have been doing some really good things. And certainly if the Canucks lose this series, at this point, you can't blame goaltending. But, there's been some rebound control issues with Casey DeSmith. He was certainly better in that regard in Game 3. And then I think the one area with Seelovs is shots from distance and around screens. Look, nobody likes screens. We know that. But you get the sense that Nashville has this sense right now of let's put some pucks at the net from wherever. You could see as the game progressed, they were really trying to shoot from near the blue line, from anywhere they could, try to get some screens. And that's kind of the one thing that he's got to work on, kind of looking around screens to find the puck, which generally a bigger goaltender like Seelovs will have some more success with once you get some experience. But the one thing with Seelovs, he is Ian Clark's guy. He might not necessarily be Rick Tocchet's guy or who the team prefers, but certainly Ian Clark has a level of confidence in Seelovs. But my gut tells me it could be Casey DeSmith for Game 6, and then all bets are off after that.
You know what really helped whoever's in net for the Vancouver Canucks in Game 6? A little more offense. Farhan, this is a team that was top 6 in the NHL in offense during the regular season. Now they're averaging just around 2 goals a game through the first 5. So how do you explain what's going on right now? Did they go cold, or do the Preds have them figured out?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Look, I think you've got to give Nashville some credit for the commitment they've made to blocking shots, especially since Game 1. But I think this is on Vancouver, right? I mean, when you look at Nashville during the regular season, they give up the 10th most shots per game during the regular season. They gave up over 30 shots per game. The Canucks right now are averaging about 18.2. 92 shots in 5 games in this series is the second lowest number all time in the playoffs, Gino. And nothing is happening outside of the JT Miller line. I mean, you look at Miller and Brock Besser as well. Since game one, the Canucks haven't had a winger besides Brock Besser score a goal. And they're not even close right now to getting where they need to. They're scoring chances. This team had 20 shots on goal in the last game. They had 13 scoring chances, and more than half the scoring chances didn't end up in a shot on goal. So they've got to find ways to get shots to the net. We've been talking about this since game two. And, even you look at Dakota Joshua and that second line with Connor Garland and Elias Lindholm. And Lindholm has done some good things for this team, including how he's played in the circle. But other than that goal in overtime to give Vancouver a 3-1 series lead, that line also hasn't produced since game one. Elias Pettersson has been Elias Pettersson. So it's been difficult to watch just how this team, which has some dynamic offensive players, has completely dried up, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. This has not been the Vancouver Canucks of the regular season.
You have to hand it to the Nashville Predators, though, because of their adjustments and what they're doing to kind of counteract the strengths of the Vancouver Canucks. You were talking about Quinn Hughes. He's been taking a pounding from the Preds so far, and yet he's not producing offensively as much as you might like, but he is still getting the job done out there. Talk to me overall about Quinn Hughes and the other blue liners and how they're handling the Preds right now.
Yeah, I think Hughes is definitely banged up. You can see what's happening in the last 3 games. They have made every effort to target him. Rick Tocchet said as much, and I think Quinn Hughes is doing as well as he can possibly do to play through it. Is he 100%? No, but Quinn Hughes at 85 or 90% is better than any defenseman in this series, other than maybe Roman Josi, who certainly hasn't taken this series over by any stretch of the imagination. So he is still out there logging heavy minutes. He's still got the puck. He's doing everything he can do, but other players need to step up a little bit. I mean, right now, we talked about those 92 shots the Canucks have generated. In the 5 games in this series, when Quinn Hughes and JT Miller are not on the ice, the Canucks have managed just 24 shots on goal and 2 goals. So, imagine that over 5 games that they're relying on Hughes and Miller so much, and Hughes particularly. Earlier this season, Philip Hronek was a really good running mate for Quinn Hughes, because when teams overplayed Hughes, you could get the puck to Hronek. He was dangerous with his shot. He was generating points. In this series, Hronek has just 3 shots on goal and no goals, no points at all in this series. He has been a ghost, which really, since the All-Star break, he has been offensively as well. He just hasn't been the same player. Defensively, this team has been built for playoff hockey in terms of the size and physicality and experience with a guy like Ian Cole, and then the other 3 gigantic defensemen they've got. And I think they've been doing their part. Nikita Zadorov has been exceptional for Vancouver right now. And what's interesting to me is you've got Zadorov and Hronek, who are both pending RFAs. And so what do you do? Because both of them are due big raises theoretically. I mean, there were some crazy numbers thrown around Hronek that he was going to get 8 years at $8 million. The Canucks should sprint away from any deal that starts with an 8 in the case of Philip Hronek, especially with what we've seen since the All-Star break and in these playoffs. And Zadorov has been playing really, really well. And they're talking about $5 million potentially for Zadorov, but he's been in a third pair role. So can you do that for him? But Zadorov has been living up to the moment in these playoffs. Philip Hronek absolutely has not. And when you consider the matchups and things like that they're facing, I mean, Quinn Hughes needs some support on his side from Hronek, and hopefully they can get it at some point. Meanwhile, Zadorov, like I said, is doing everything he possibly can. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag. But when I look at whether the forwards are doing what they need to do or whether the defense is doing what it needs to do, the defense is outplaying Vancouver's forwards right now, because outside of JT Miller and Lindholm at times, they haven't been getting much up front.
JT Miller, you reminded me of something. Last question before I let you go. You always wonder how tense things are, especially when a team is getting ready for their biggest game of the season to this point. Apparently, JT Miller wanted to bring a little levity to the skate today.
Yeah, and he's been that guy for the Canucks, right? He's kind of been their emotional heartbeat. So Arturs Shilovs wore a fairly loud shirt to the practice today. So JT Miller decided to wear it for the beginning of the morning skate. So he actually took this dress shirt, put it on over his shoulder pads, and wore it for the first part of practice this morning. And then eventually he went back and put on his green jersey to go with the first line. And that's what he does. Zadorov was asked about it afterwards, and he's like, Shilovs has got to understand, he's not at a nightclub in Riga right now. You can't wear a shirt like that. So they're definitely having some fun with the young guy. And This goes back to Miller earlier in the season, late in the regular season when it was the 400th game for Connor Garland, and he had T-shirts made up for the entire team just to have some fun with Garland. So he is like that because at that moment, the Canucks were kind of struggling a little bit, and they needed to be lightened up a little bit, and JT Miller brought that to the table right there, and you have to believe that's part of his thought process right now in wearing that shirt because they all had a pretty good chuckle about it.
A little fun and levity on the off day, but you can bet it's going to be all business come Friday when the Canucks and Preds meet in Nashville in Game 6. Vancouver just a win away from advancing to the second round. Farhan Lalji has joined us from Vancouver.